I'm standing in the hallway of the house I helped build. Photos I framed still hang on the walls, but I can feel I don't belong here anymore. My daughter-in-law's voice cuts through the silence. We've decided it's best if you find somewhere else to stay. Somewhere else? This was my son's home. My home. I had moved in after my husband died, thinking family would carry one another through hard times. But I was wrong. I look at my son, hoping he'll say something, anything, but he just stares at the floor. No defense, no love, just silence. They tell me I've overstayed my welcome, that I make things uncomfortable, that I'm not really part of this family anymore. It's like someone reached inside me and flipped a switch. I'm not even crying. I just nod, go back to my room, and pack in silence. They think they've won, that I'll leave quietly, fade away, and be forgotten. But they have no idea who I really am. I've spent my life putting others first. I buried my own dreams for the sake of family. Not anymore. If they won't call me family, I'll create one on my own terms, one built not on blood, but on love, kindness, and loyalty. They pushed me out. Now they'll see what I do when I have nothing left to lose. My name is Margaret Walker. I'm 67 years old, a retired nurse, a mother of 2, and a grandmother of 4. For most of my life, I believed in one simple truth: family takes care of each other. I lived by it, fought for it, and sacrificed everything for it. I was married to my late husband Harold for 42 years. We met in high school, fell in love over shared milkshakes and Sunday picnics, and built a quiet life in rural Pennsylvania. We raised 2 sons, Michael and Daniel, in a home filled with hand-sewn curtains, homemade meals, and bedtime stories told by candlelight during power outages. We didn't have much, but we had love. I worked night shifts at the hospital for decades, patching up broken bones and holding strangers' hands through the worst moments of their lives. Harold was a carpenter, the kind of man who never raised his voice and always made our boys wooden toys for Christmas. Even when we could barely afford the nails, we didn't travel. We didn't dine out. Every extra dollar went to our boys, their sports uniforms, their braces, college tuition. We gave up vacations, new clothes, and even heating in the winter just so they'd never feel poor. And for a while, I thought it paid off. Michael, my oldest, went into finance. Daniel followed his father's footsteps, becoming a contractor. When Harold passed from a stroke 5 years ago, they were both there at the funeral. They held me close. They promised they'd take care of me now. "You'll never be alone, Mom," they said. Michael and his wife Tanya invited me to move into their guest room. I hesitated, but Tanya insisted. "It'll be good for the kids to have Grandma around," she said. "Family should stick together." At first, it felt like a blessing. I baked cookies with my grandkids, helped them with homework, and told them stories about their grandfather. I folded laundry. Without being asked, I cleaned, I cooked, and I even helped pay the bills with my modest retirement income. Tanya said she appreciated it, but I noticed her tone changing. Suddenly, I was always around. She said I spoiled the kids or undermined her parenting. I began tiptoeing in my own space, careful not to cause waves. I thought maybe I was being sensitive. But then came the comments, "Maybe you should spend more time at the senior center. You know, some mothers live on their own well into their 80s. I just think everyone needs their privacy." Michael didn't say much. He'd nod awkwardly or clear his throat. He was always busy with work. And slowly, my place in the house shrank from a guest to a ghost. I overheard things I wasn't meant to hear. Tanya complaining that I was dead weight, that I didn't contribute enough, that I was cramping their lifestyle. The worst was when she found out about the small savings account Harold and I had tucked away years ago. It wasn't much, just $32,000, a rainy day fund we never touched. I never told anyone about it. I kept it in a separate account just in case. I'd been using that money quietly to help cover groceries, electric bills, and even bought school clothes for the kids one fall without telling them. I thought I was helping. But one day, I left my online banking app open on the family iPad by mistake. That changed everything. Tanya saw the account and assumed I was hiding money. She accused me of lying, of freeloading while hoarding thousands. I tried to explain. I told her it wasn't about the money, it was about feeling like I still mattered, like I had something to offer. But she wouldn't hear it. She told Michael I was manipulative, that I was playing victim, that I was using guilt to keep myself in their lives. And that's when it happened. They sat me down like some stranger and told me it was time to move on, that they'd done their part and I needed to find my independence again. My heart broke that day, but not because they asked me to leave. No, it broke because my own son let it happen. He didn't defend me. He didn't argue. He just looked at me with tired eyes and said, "Maybe it's for the best, Mom." The house that once smelled like Sunday roast and echoed with laughter now felt cold, clinical, and unfamiliar. I packed my things quietly, folded my clothes, took my knitting, my books, and left behind a lifetime of memories on a shelf they'd probably dust off and donate. They thought I had nowhere to go. They thought I had no one. But what they didn't know, what they never bothered to ask, was that I had once helped a young girl at the hospital who had no one. Her name was Leah. She was 17, homeless, and terrified. I used to bring her snacks from the break room and once gave her my own coat. We stayed in touch over the years, and when I called her that night, her voice cracked with emotion. "Of course you can stay with me, Miss Margaret. You saved me once. Now it's my turn." That's how I found a new kind of family, the kind you don't inherit but create. At first, I kept telling myself it was just a misunderstanding. That Tanya was stressed. That Michael was distracted with work. I told myself I was lucky to be near my grandchildren. That it was all worth it, even if I had to swallow a little pride. But then the little things began. I noticed the way Tanya left dirty dishes in the sink, specifically when I was in the kitchen. "Oh, you're already in there, Margaret. Mind giving these a rinse?" It became a daily routine, plates stacked, laundry dumped, toys everywhere, and all of it quietly expected to be handled by me. It wasn't a request anymore, it was assumed. Michael would walk in and instead of greeting me, he'd say, "Did you get a chance to vacuum the living room? The kids made a mess again." No hello. No how are you. Just tasks. I was no longer mom or grandma, I was the maid in the background. At family events, the shift was even clearer. Last Thanksgiving, I spent the entire morning prepping the turkey, mashing potatoes, and baking pies. But when guests arrived, Tanya introduced the meal as her recipe. I stood there, still in my apron, while she took compliments from her friends about how hard she worked. Then came Christmas. Everyone was gathered around the tree. The kids were tearing open gifts while Tanya handed out name tags for the stockings. She passed mine to me and giggled. I looked at it. It read, "Old lady footing the bill." Everyone laughed, even Michael. They thought it was funny, a joke. But I just stood there smiling so they wouldn't see the tears welling up in my eyes. I told myself it was harmless. But deep down, something cracked. I felt it, the slow splintering of something sacred. I began noticing I wasn't invited to certain things. Tanya's sister had a bridal shower. I wasn't told. Then came her cousin's wedding. When I asked Michael why I wasn't going, he said it was mostly young people and I'd probably feel out of place. But they let me watch the kids that night, so at least I was useful. When Tanya's cousin got married, I offered to come take a family photo with everyone after the ceremony. You know what she said? "Oh, Margaret, maybe just sit this one out." The photographer's trying to keep the look consistent. She meant young, trendy, Instagram ready, not old, not me. Later that evening, I looked through the photos on Tanya's phone. There they were, my son, my grandkids, even Tanya's third cousin from New Jersey, all smiling, all together without me. My heart didn't just ache, it felt hollow. And then came the day that changed everything. I overheard a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. Tanya was on the phone in the kitchen, and I had just come back from grocery shopping. I stayed in the hallway, frozen, as I heard her say, "She's got money." I saw the account. "She's just playing poor, so we keep letting her stay here." Pause. She won't leave unless we make her uncomfortable enough. Then laughter. Honestly, if she wasn't so useful with the kids, I'd have kicked her out already. She was talking about me. I stumbled back quietly, groceries still in hand. I hand and locked myself in the guest room. I didn't cry. I was too stunned, too numb. I'd heard the words, but it was the intent behind them that destroyed me. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as an inconvenience with a bank account. A few days later, Tanya hosted a family planning meeting at the house. Everyone gathered. Michael, Tanya, her parents, even her brother. I wasn't even told it was happening. I found out when I walked into the kitchen and saw them all seated at the table. Tanya looked up and said, "Oh hey, Margaret. Do you mind giving us a little privacy?" I blinked. "This is about the house, isn't it?" Michael sighed. "We're just discussing some options. It's nothing personal." I looked around at the people who now decided my fate, like I was a tenant, not a mother, not a human being. I backed away and went to the back porch, where I sat and stared at the woods for over an hour. Later, Michael came out and sat beside me. "We think it's time for you to explore other arrangements." "Other arrangements?" I asked him. "Did I do something wrong?" He shook his head slowly. "It's not that. It's just Tanya doesn't feel comfortable anymore." "Things have changed," I whispered. "Do you?" He didn't answer. That silence said more than any words could. They didn't want me. Not as I was. Not with the gray hair, the stiff knees, the tired smile. They wanted me quiet, out of the picture. Maybe in a nursing home somewhere, out of sight, out of mind. But there was still one betrayal left. My youngest son, Daniel. I called him in desperation. I hadn't spoken to him much since Harold passed, but I hoped maybe he'd listen. I poured my heart out, told him everything. The disrespect, the manipulation, the way I was being forced out of my own family. He was quiet. Then he said, "Well, to be honest, Tanya warned me you might call. She said, 'You've been stirring up drama.'" I blinked. "You believe her?" He hesitated. "She said, 'You've been acting strange, like you're resentful. Maybe this is just a misunderstanding.'" That was when I knew Tanya had turned him too. Maybe it was subtle. Maybe it was years of comments, small manipulations, passive-aggressive complaints, but it worked. She'd painted me as the bitter old woman, the one who couldn't let go, the burden. And the worst part? My sons let it happen. They didn't fight for me. They didn't question it. They just went along with it like I was luggage they were tired of carrying. From that point on, I started planning quietly, carefully. Not for revenge, but for dignity, for peace, for a life that didn't rely on the mercy of ungrateful children. I made phone calls, reconnected with people from the hospital days, found Leia again, the young girl I once helped who now owned a small cafe with a studio apartment above it. "I owe you my life," she told me. "Come, you'll have your own space." No strings attached. I sold what I had left, transferred my savings, and walked away from a house filled with noise and emptiness. They told me I wasn't family anymore, so I made my own. It came next. That's where the story truly begins. You always think betrayal feels like a knife to the back, but for me, it felt more like a door slowly closing and no one caring enough to stop it. It happened 2 weeks after I had quietly started preparing to leave. I hadn't told anyone, not even my closest friend, Mara. I was still figuring things out, still clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, someone in this family would stop, look at me, and remember who I used to be. That hope died the day Tanya held a private dinner. It was a Saturday night. I had just finished bathing the kids, tucking in little Sophie, and helping Aiden with his nightlight. As I stepped out of their room, I heard laughter downstairs, clinking glasses, music. I paused at the top of the stairs. Tanya's voice rang out, "To new beginnings." Then Michael's warm and excited voice followed. "Couldn't have done it without your parents' help, babe." I came down, confused. No one had told me there was a dinner, but there they were. Tanya, Michael, her parents, Daniel, and even a real estate agent sitting at the table with a laptop. I stood in the doorway, blinking. Tanya froze for a moment, then forced a smile. "Oh, Margaret, we didn't know you were up." Michael avoided eye contact. "What's going on?" I asked. Silence. Then the real estate agent cheerfully said, "We're just finalizing the sale of the house." Big move for the family. I looked at Michael, waiting for him to say it wasn't what it sounded like, but it was. He finally said, "We're selling, Mom. It's the best move for the kids. Better school district, more space. It's time." I swallowed hard. "And where does that leave me?" Tanya answered before Michael could. "Well, we assumed you'd go stay with someone. Or maybe it's time to look into one of those lovely retirement communities. We've even got brochures." She handed me a glossy pamphlet like she was doing me a favor. I stared at it, a smiling woman on the front holding a salad and pretending that her heart hadn't just been shattered by her own children. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just nodded slowly and walked back upstairs. Later that night, I packed my things in silence. 2 suitcases, a box of photos, my wedding ring. The next morning, I came downstairs with my luggage and asked Michael if I could borrow the car just to run a few errands. He looked nervous. "Actually, Tanya needs it today. Big planning meeting with the movers." I stood there holding my bags in front of the house I helped them buy, the house I had cleaned and cared for every day. And I was being denied a ride, not even a goodbye hug from the kids. Tanya had taken them out early so I wouldn't upset them. I had no ride, no one to call right away. Michael sighed and muttered, "You can put your stuff in the basement until you figure something out. It's not safe to be dragging that around the streets." I followed him down the narrow wooden steps. The basement smelled like mildew. The old washer and dryer buzzed in the corner. He pointed to the corner. "Just keep your things there for now." Then I heard it, the click of the lock. I spun around. The door at the top of the stairs had closed. I heard Tanya's voice, quiet and muffled, then nothing. I stood there, stunned. It wasn't an accident. I tried the door. Locked. I called out, "Michael." No answer. I sat on the bottom step for nearly 20 minutes before I heard the door open again. Tanya stood there, her face cold. "There's food in the mini fridge. Please don't come up unless you need the bathroom. We've got buyers coming by this week, and we really need to keep the house clean." Then she shut the door again, not slammed, just calmly, like she was putting away something she didn't need anymore. I sat there in that basement for 2 days. 2 days of hearing laughter upstairs, hearing my own grandchildren play without me. 2 days of being invisible, forgotten, hidden like clutter during an open house. On the second evening, when I finally emerged to use the bathroom, I found a note taped to the door. "We've left for the weekend. Please don't rearrange anything. There's frozen meals in the mini fridge. Back Sunday night. Tanya." That was the moment. Not the locking, not the silence. It was that note, the way it was written, like I was a tenant, an afterthought, an inconvenience to be managed. I stared at that note for a long time, and then for the first time in years, I cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quiet, steady tears that ran down my face as I stood in a hallway that once held birthday streamers and family portraits and now held nothing. No pictures of me. No sign I'd ever mattered here. I curled up in the basement that night, holding a picture of my late husband, Harold. I whispered to him, "They finally did it, love." They made me feel small. And the worst part? I believed them. For one night, I believed I was a burden, that maybe I had overstayed, that maybe I was the problem. But morning came, and with it, clarity. Not rage, not revenge, just resolve, a quiet knowing that this life, this family I had bled for, wept for, raised and nurtured, they were no longer mine, and I wasn't theirs. That was the day I truly left. Not with boxes, not with a bang, but with dignity and the flicker of something I hadn't felt in years, hope. What came next was mine to build. They thought I had nowhere to go, no plan, no strength left. But they were wrong. What Tanya and Michael never realized was that while they were whispering behind doors and handing me brochures to retirement homes, I had already begun writing my next chapter. Because I wasn't helpless. I was watching, I was remembering, and I was ready. It started months before the basement. The disrespect had been growing like mold, slow, suffocating. I'd felt it long before Tanya made it obvious. So I began preparing quietly, piece by piece. First, the papers. One day, while they were out, Tanya taking the kids to gymnastics, Michael networking at a brewery, I opened the drawer in my bedroom and pulled out a manila envelope labeled 1999. Inside were the deed papers, the ones Michael had asked me to. I co-signed when they bought the house. But what he forgot, or maybe never realized, was that I didn't just co-sign. I bought the house. Every down payment, every tax, every renovation, all from my savings. My late husband Harold had left me a small fortune, modest but carefully invested. And I never told the kids. I didn't want them seeing me as a bank. So I kept it quiet, which meant this house was mine. Not shared, not borrowed, not even gifted, fully legally mine. The mortgage was in their name, but the land, the property rights, and the full equity transferred to me after Harold's passing, per the clause I had quietly written into the deed. Michael had never bothered to read the full document. Tanya, of course, had only cared about the kitchen counters. Next, the evidence. Every receipt for groceries I'd paid, every electric bill under my name, the cash I gave Tanya for emergencies that mysteriously turned into spa trips, all of it copied, printed, filed. I even had text messages, every snide comment, every request that sounded sweet on the surface, but reeked of control. Could you just pick up the kids again? I'm so tired. You're the best. I told my friends I had a built-in maid. Don't tell Mom you're using her credit card. She's old. She won't notice. They thought I was deaf to their little schemes, but I wasn't. I was quiet. There's a difference. Then I did something none of them would have expected. I walked into a law firm. It was a small office on Main Street next to the antique shop, the same place Harold and I had updated our wills years ago. The receptionist blinked when she saw me, and even the lawyer looked surprised. But I wasn't confused, frail, or lost. I laid out my folder of documents and said calmly, I'm ready to make some changes. Quietly but legally, I want to set things in motion. The lawyer, a kind woman named Elise, leaned forward with a smile. Tell me everything. And I did. We redrafted the will. We set up a trust fund, but not for Michael or Tanya. Instead, I created something new, the Ellelaner Fund, named after my grandmother, a woman who escaped a cruel marriage with only a sewing machine and a baby on her back. The fund would support women over 60 starting over, especially the ones no one else believed in. I also instructed Elise to draft a revocation letter, removing Michael from power of attorney and putting Mara, my oldest friend, in his place. I'd trusted him for too long. No more. And finally, I had the locks changed. That's right, 2 days after they left for their weekend getaway, I called a locksmith and had every door on that property rekeyed to my set. When they came back Sunday night, their keys wouldn't work. They called me furious. I let it ring. Then I texted back, don't worry, your things are safe in the garage. I boxed them up myself. The house is mine. The sale's canceled. Have your lawyer contact mine. That was it. That was the moment everything shifted. They had tried to erase me, but I had quietly taken back the pen emotionally. It wasn't easy. I'd spent years. Being needed for years. Being the glue, the giver, the invisible foundation. But in that silence, in the hours I spent alone preparing, I found a strange kind of peace. A new version of myself was rising, one who didn't shrink to fit inside other people's comfort zones. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building a new will, a new plan, a new life. I didn't need to slam doors or scream in courtrooms. I just needed the truth and a little patience because they thought they could replace me. They forgot I was the root. They were only branches. And now it was time to grow something new. Power doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. And in that whisper, everyone listens. The week after I locked the doors behind me, the phone calls came pouring in. Michael, Tanya, even Daniel, who barely remembered my birthday. They all wanted to talk to clear up the misunderstanding. I didn't respond. I let the silence speak. And then an invitation arrived. Not in my home, of course. They were still too proud for that. No, this was delivered by courier. You are invited to Aiden and Sophie's private school scholarship celebration hosted by Michael and Tanya, May 14th, 3 p.m., Hillrest Country Club Ballroom. RSVP required. It wasn't just a party. It was a statement, a flex, a way to show off the perfect family they still pretended to be. What they didn't realize was that the scholarship I had arranged quietly, anonymously, through the Eleanor Fund. They thought Tanya's dad had pulled strings, that Michael's connections had done the trick. They had no idea the only reason their children got in was because I wanted them to, and now they were throwing a party to celebrate it without me. That's when I decided if they were going to celebrate my generosity without acknowledging me, I'd give them something else to talk about, something they wouldn't forget. The ballroom was packed. Tanya wore a pale pink dress, smiling for photographers like she was royalty. Michael stood by the open bar, laughing too loudly, shaking hands with anyone who looked important. Guests were sipping champagne, complimenting the floral arrangements, nibbling on shrimp cocktail. Not a single mention of me. I walked in quietly, black dress, simple pearls, hair pulled back in a tight bun. People turned, not because I was loud, but because I wasn't supposed to be there. Tanya's smile froze mid-sip. Michael's jaw visibly clenched. They walked over. Tanya's voice was a perfect mix of fake concern and passive aggression. "Oh, Margaret, you made it. We didn't expect you." I smiled. "That much is clear." Michael stepped in. "Look, this is kind of a private thing. Important people are here. Investors, parents from the board. Let's not cause a scene." I looked him in the eye. "I'm not here to cause a scene. I'm here to make an announcement." Without waiting for permission, I turned and walked up to the podium where the DJ was prepping a music playlist. I tapped the microphone gently. The music faded. All eyes turned to me. Tanya whispered something harsh to Michael, but neither of them. They were trapped. I began calmly. "Good afternoon, everyone. I promise I won't keep you long. I know you're all here to celebrate two very bright children, Sophie and Aiden." There were polite claps. I love those children with all my heart, which is why I did something a few months ago that I didn't tell anyone about. A murmur spread through the room. Tanya was shifting now, visibly anxious. I continued. "See, when Sophie told me her dream was to be a veterinarian, I knew she needed a good school. And when Aiden said he wanted to build things, I knew he'd thrive in a place with real science labs. But Michael and Tanya, well, they didn't quite have the means." Now the whispers grew louder. Michael's face flushed. "So I created a fund, quietly, anonymously, a scholarship for families in transition. Families that needed just a little help, but were too proud to ask." A few heads turned toward Michael and Tanya. "And I used that fund to fully pay for both children's tuition, every dollar, every book, every meal." Now people were gasping. Tanya mouthed something I won't repeat here. And today, I said, my voice unwavering, "Since we're all here, I thought it would be a good time to clarify a few things." I reached into my purse and pulled out a crisp folder, cream-colored with gold lettering. Firstly, about the house. Many of you know Michael and Tanya were planning to sell it. Hostile market. Brave choice, right? A few people chuckled. Well, that house is not for sale. Not anymore. Because I canceled the listing. Why? Because they don't own it. I held up the deed transfer, stamped and notarized. My name is on the deed and has been for years. Mouths dropped. One guest even dropped their wine glass. Michael stepped forward now. "Mom, that's not necessary." I raised a finger, not angrily, just enough to stop him. Secondly, about the Eleanor Fund. It will continue, but going forward it will focus on helping women over 60 who've been pushed out of their own homes by ungrateful children. Applications open next month. The crowd broke into stunned applause, half confused, half impressed. And finally, I turned to face Michael and Tanya directly. You told me I wasn't family anymore, that I was a burden, that I didn't belong, and I believed that for a while. I took a breath, but I remembered something my husband used to say: blood doesn't make you family. Love does. I scanned the room. So to anyone out there who's been discarded, forgotten, humiliated by the very people they raised, remember this: you're not broken, you're not alone, and you're not done. With that, I stepped down from the podium and walked out of the ballroom, calm, graceful, powerful. Behind me, Tanya was in tears, trying to explain to guests that it was just a misunderstanding. Michael was trying to calm me, but it was too late. The power had shifted forever. The silence after the storm was louder than the storm itself. I didn't hear from Michael or Tanya for 2 full days after the ballroom. I imagine they were busy trying to control the narrative. The school board called lawyers who all told them the same thing. Yes, legally she owns the house. No, the scholarship cannot be refunded. Yes, there is media interest now because, of course, someone had recorded my speech. 2 angles actually both went viral. One on Facebook with the caption, "Grandma pays for everything, gets kicked out, then drops truth bomb in front of everyone." The second made it to TikTok with millions of views by morning, "When grandma is a silent billionaire and you forgot to be decent." Tanya tried to leave a comment defending herself, but it was deleted within an hour. The backlash was swift and ruthless. People weren't just watching, they were taking sides. And spoiler alert, they weren't on hers. By the weekend, there was a knock on my door. Michael, his shoulders hunched, a duffel bag slung over one side, eyes swollen like he hadn't slept. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. "Mom," he said quietly, "I messed up." I didn't respond. He kept going. "Tanya's gone to her parents. We're probably losing the country club membership. She canceled the trip to Italy and the house." Well, he laughed nervously. I don't know what I was thinking. "We got comfortable, entitled. We just assumed you'd always be there." I tilted my head. "As your maid." His eyes welled up. "No, as our mother." I stood quiet for a beat, then said calmly, "You told me I wasn't family anymore, that I was too much. You made it clear I was disposable." "I didn't mean it," he said quickly. "Tanya said it and you didn't stop her," I interrupted. "You joined her." He looked down. The silence stretched between us. "I just want to fix things," he finally said. "What do I have to do?" I looked him in the eye. Not with anger, just truth. "You have to start over like I did, without me fixing it for you." He nodded a slow, painful nod. "Can I still call you sometimes?" I softened slightly. "You can call, but don't expect to be rescued." He swallowed hard. "Fair." Then he turned and walked away. Tanya didn't show up, but she did send an email. 3 paragraphs of performative apologies and thinly veiled blame. "We were stressed. You never told us you had money. We didn't mean to hurt you." I didn't reply. I simply forwarded it to my lawyer and filed it under a new folder, Lessons. In the following weeks, the consequences grew deeper. The private school board, uncomfortable with the public scandal, politely suggested Aiden and Sophie take a gap year. The Ellelaner Fund offered 2 other girls their places. Tanya and Michael had to move into a smaller rental 2 towns over. Michael lost his job after his boss saw the video. Apparently, people don't want a financial advisor who can't manage his own family's money or morals. Their social circle was gone. Country Club revoked their membership. PTA parents blocked them online. They tried to pivot the narrative, claiming they were tricked, that I'd manipulated them. But the court of public opinion wasn't buying it because the receipts were out, literally. And me? I didn't gloat. I didn't post cryptic quotes on Facebook. I simply breathed. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells. I wasn't financing cruelty or tolerating disrespect out of fear of family tension. I felt light. I started going to a poetry class, took up painting, and even joined a women's hiking group, the Silver Souls. I met women just like me, left behind, dismissed, undervalued, and like me, they were done being invisible. We shared stories, laughed louder than we were supposed to, and cried without apologizing. That, to me, became family. One morning, while sitting on my porch with a cup of tea, my friend Mara turned to me and asked, "Do you miss them?" Even a little. I paused, then answered honestly, "I miss the version of them I thought they were, but I don't miss who they became." She nodded slowly. I looked out at the garden I'd planted myself, peas, lavender, and sunflowers tall as hope. "I spent my whole life giving," I said. "And for a while, I thought that's all I was good for. But now I know I have value even when I'm not sacrificing myself." That was the real revenge. Not the house, not the public embarrassment, but the peace that comes from knowing you don't need to be tolerated. You deserve to be treasured. It's been almost a year since the ballroom. The viral videos faded, the headlines disappeared, and life settled into something simpler, quieter. Not quieter as in lonely, but quieter as in peaceful. I wake up with the sun now, brew my tea, and water the garden. My body feels lighter, even if it's older. Maybe that's what happens when you stop caring about people who refuse to lift you in return. About 2 months ago, I got a letter in the mail. It was handwritten, the envelope shaky with familiar scrolls. It was from Aiden, my grandson, just 16, but somehow more grown than the adults around him. He apologized, not in the hollow, performative way I'd grown used to, but with honesty. "Grandma, I didn't know everything back then, but I knew they were wrong to treat you that way. I was scared to say anything. I want to do better. I miss you. Can I come see you?" My hands trembled as I read those words, not because they hurt, but because they healed something I didn't know was still open. I wrote back with one word: yes. Aiden visits once a week now. We bake, he helps me with my phone, I teach him how to fold towels the right way, and he pretends to hate it. He asks questions. He listens, really listens. One afternoon, while we sat on the porch, he asked, "Grandma, how did you stay so calm when everything went wrong?" I smiled. It wasn't always calm, but I learned something. Rage burns fast. Silence lasts longer. He nodded. "So, quiet revenge?" "No," I said gently, "quiet strength. I never set out to destroy anyone. That's not who I am. But I did stop destroying myself to keep the peace." That was the shift. And with that shift, something inside me bloomed. With my lawyer's help, I set up a scholarship fund. Not for Aiden, he'll be fine. For girls like me, girls raised to serve, to shrink, to survive. It's called the Eleanor Fund, named after my grandmother. The first woman I ever saw say no to disrespect. We fund tuition, small business grants, and living stipends for women over 50 who want to start over because it's never too late. Not to grow, not to leave, not to love yourself again. Do I regret giving so much of my life to people who didn't see me? Sometimes. But if I hadn't lived through that pain, I wouldn't know what peace feels like now. If I hadn't been pushed aside, I wouldn't have found the room to stand tall. And if they hadn't told me I wasn't family anymore, I never would have realized I had the power to make my own. To anyone listening, to the quiet ones, the caretakers, the forgivers, know this: you are not just valuable when you're useful. You don't owe your soul to people who share your blood, but not your respect. And revenge? It's overrated. But self-respect? That's the kind of power no one can take away. What would you have done if your own children betrayed you like this? Would you fight back, walk away, or stay silent? Do you think I was wrong for taking control of my own life and my home? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. I want to hear your story.